It was supposed to be harmless, just another punchline tossed into Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update, the kind that gets a few laughs and disappears by morning. But the moment Colin Jost's words left his mouth, something shifted. The audience didn't just laugh, they erupted with a sound that felt like relief, like they'd been holding their breath for years, waiting for someone to finally say it out loud. Colin felt it immediately. The energy in the room tightened, focused, electrified. This wasn't a normal joke. This was a detonator. And across the country, in a pristine Montecito mansion, Meghan Markle's carefully constructed world began to crack. Because Colin hadn't just roasted her, he'd done something far more dangerous. He'd given mainstream America permission to acknowledge what they'd been pretending not to see. And once that door opened, every whisper, every rumor, every buried story from Meghan's past came roaring back to life. What started as a joke became a cultural earthquake, and the aftershocks are still tearing through her life. The setup was simple. Colin delivered a line about President Trump announcing a new trade deal with the UK, and all they wanted in return was for America to keep Harry and Meghan. The room exploded. Not polite chuckles, full-on cathartic laughter. The kind that says, "We've all been thinking this. Thank God someone finally said it." Colin paused, smirked, and added, "To be fair, those two are more dangerous than anything the UK has sent us in decades." The crowd lost it. But underneath the laughter was something darker, a shared understanding that this wasn't just comedy anymore. Colin was inviting the audience to stop pretending, and when nobody booed, when nobody shifted uncomfortably the way they once did whenever Meghan's name came up, that was his green light. So he went further, way further. He pivoted into a line that referenced old whispers Meghan had spent her entire adult life dodging. You know, Meghan plays that "I'm just an innocent ginger's wife who stumbled into royal chaos" card, but some folks know the real game. Loaded, pointed. Colin didn't have to explain. People who knew, knew, and those who didn't went home and Googled. Then came the moment SNL stopped being comedy and became a public execution. Colin's tone dropped. His smile faded just enough. He mentioned Epstein, casually, deliberately. Epstein, clever guy, never in photos, loved taking pictures of other people though. That's how these yacht folks work. The audience froze. A few nervous laughs. Someone gasped. You could feel the room realizing, oh, we're going there. And Colin didn't blink. Funny thing, people keep saying there are no photos of Meghan on certain yachts. Well, yeah, that's how these guys operated. They took photos of the guests, not themselves. The silence wasn't confusion, it was recognition, because the internet had been whispering about Meghan's alleged yacht circuit past long before she became the Duchess of Authenticity. Whether those whispers were true didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that SNL, the most sanitized mainstream comedy machine in America, had just stepped into the rumor swamp without a hazmat suit. Here's why Colin's joke hit different than every tabloid article, every blog post, every Twitter thread that came before it. Comedy makes rumors immortal. Once something becomes a punchline, it enters cultural memory. You don't need proof, you don't need evidence, you just need the audience to laugh in recognition. And they did. The yacht girl rumors had been circulating in dark corners of the internet for years. Whispers about Meghan's pre-royal life, allegations she'd been part of the elite yacht circuit where young, attractive women were flown to private parties in places like Thailand, the Mediterranean, and the Caribbean. Stories about connections to wealthy men, about Soho House memberships that allegedly served as recruitment pipelines, about a lifestyle that didn't match her struggling actress narrative. None of it was ever proven, but all of it lingered, and Colin's joke took those whispers and dragged them into the mainstream spotlight. Suddenly, middle America was Googling Meghan Markle yacht rumors. Suddenly, people who'd never heard the allegations were asking questions. Suddenly, the narrative Meghan had carefully built, the one where she was just a hardworking actress who fell in love with a prince, started showing cracks. Because if one joke could make millions of people question her story, maybe the story wasn't as solid as she'd claimed. The internet didn't need Colin to confirm anything. They just needed permission to look, and he'd given it to them. Meghan's first instinct was silence. Don't engage, don't acknowledge, let it blow over. But this time, silence backfired spectacularly, because in the modern era, silence gets interpreted as confirmation. Every hour she said nothing, the story fermented. The rumor mill spun faster. People started connecting dots Colin never even drew. Old Suits promotional photos, glamorous beach shoots, yacht parties the cast attended, summer events sponsored by wealthy donors. Completely innocent at the time, but context was dead now. Only aesthetic mattered, and the aesthetic aligned too neatly with the yacht narratives people were hungry to believe. Meghan couldn't sue. Lawsuits require discovery. Discovery requires documents. Documents lead to leaks. Leaks lead to headlines that would make everything worse. She couldn't do another Oprah-style interview. That would look defensive, desperate. And after the backlash from the first interview, public sympathy had evaporated. She couldn't laugh it off. Humor requires distance, and she was trapped inside the narrative, suffocating under its weight. Her PR team drafted 4 different statements, all too defensive, all too reactive, all too dangerous. Every sentence risked acknowledging a rumor they couldn't legally touch. Inside Montecito, the arguments escalated. Harry begged her to say something, anything, even a joke to show she wasn't rattled. But Meghan wasn't capable of humor now. She'd built her entire post-royal identity on being taken seriously, on being the victim who survived, on being the Duchess of Compassion. And now, a comedian with a smirk had reduced all of it to a punchline. While Meghan spiraled, the palace made its move. Not with press releases, not with dramatic statements, with strategic silence. Former senior palace aides started giving carefully worded interviews. They said nothing defamatory, nothing direct, but what they did say sent shockwaves. There were concerns at the time, concerns that were handled privately and appropriately. 3 words Meghan never wanted associated with her past. Concerns, privately, appropriately. The internet exploded. What concerns? What timeline? What were they handling? Why had nobody said this before? The palace stayed silent, because silence is a weapon, and the monarchy had just unsheathed it. Then came the archives. Buried in a press release about royal finances was one vague paragraph. Further documentation regarding historical patronage activities will be released this quarter. It was generic, it was boring, and yet everyone understood what it meant. Historical patronage activities included Prince Andrew's work as trade ambassador during the exact years the yacht rumors circulated, which meant if the palace released anything tied to his movements, anyone associated with those years could be dragged into the spotlight. Meghan's name wasn't mentioned, but the timing was too perfect to ignore. The monarchy was reminding the world where the power truly sat, and it wasn't in California. Royal reporters noticed a pattern. The palace wasn't defending Meghan, but they also weren't ignoring the situation. Their avoidance was too pointed, too precise, too calculated, as if the institution had decided that distancing themselves wasn't enough. They needed to make sure the world understood why. Colin Jost, meanwhile, did absolutely nothing, and somehow that made everything worse. A week after the initial joke, he appeared on a late-night show. The host asked if he knew he'd blown up Meghan's entire month. Colin froze. The audience erupted. And instead of backtracking, he leaned forward with the tiniest smirk. Look, if one joke can blow up your month, the month wasn't that stable to begin with. That was it. One sentence. Not even an insult. Just a dry, matter-of-fact observation spoken with a calmness that only made it sharper. The clip hit 30 million views in a day. Hashtags reactivated, old rumors resurfaced with twice the power. At a charity gala weeks later, a journalist shouted a question as Colin walked past. "Do you regret the Meghan joke?" He laughed. Light, harmless, dismissive. "No, I regret nothing. I'm a comedian." A simple answer, innocent, but the way he said it with that easy confidence gave the internet permission to keep digging. It was like he'd declared the topic open season. Every major outlet wanted him on record. They wanted him to weigh in, to become part of the storyline. He refused, politely, firmly, repeatedly. But even his refusal added fuel. Headlines read, "Colin Jost declines to comment on Meghan Markle controversy," which only made people assume there was something to comment on. His silence spoke louder than any PR statement could. It became clear to everyone that Meghan wasn't fighting Colin Jost. She was fighting the ghost of who she used to be, or who people believed she used to be. And Colin had simply shined a spotlight on the one thing she never wanted the world to rethink her past. The walls kept closing in. Someone dug up old interviews where Meghan described her early Hollywood years as struggling, broke, barely surviving. That version directly contradicted the yacht rumors, and instead of clearing her name, the contradiction made people more suspicious. Why were those two versions so different? Why did the timelines feel misaligned? Then came the whispers from her past. A British investigative journalist posted a cryptic message. Some people built their new lives on foundations they hoped we'd never revisit. He didn't mention Meghan. He didn't need to. His followers knew exactly who he meant. Within minutes, the post went viral. Then a former acquaintance, someone tied to Meghan's Hollywood past, sent a message to a gossip blogger. 2 simple words. I'm ready. The blogger didn't post the message, didn't reveal the source, simply tweeted, "Interview coming." Those 2 words were enough to make Meghan's world tilt, because whispers from the past don't appear unless someone smells opportunity. And with the internet on fire, opportunity was everywhere. Inside Montecito, Meghan couldn't sleep. She kept replaying every article, every rumor, every blurry photograph from her early years. Things she'd forgotten, things she'd outgrown, things she'd dismissed as irrelevant. But they weren't irrelevant now. Not when people were determined to connect dots even she had forgotten existed. Her entire past felt suddenly fragile, like glass cracking under pressure. Hollywood executives started whispering about brand risk. Fashion houses delayed responses. Producers suddenly had scheduling conflicts for any new projects with her. The temperature around her name had dropped so quickly that even people who liked her were stepping back. Finally, Meghan made a decision. She couldn't stay quiet anymore. Not because she wanted to speak, but because silence had turned into an admission of guilt she refused to accept. She needed to take back the narrative. She needed to show strength, control, composure. What she wanted was something curated, something polished, something she could manage without interruption. She wanted a documentary, a new one, not about the royals, not about victimhood, one about her truth, her version of events, her past, her struggle, her rise, a full rebranding reset. Harry's face dropped when she told him. "Another documentary?" he whispered. "Meg, after everything, you think they'll believe it?" She didn't answer, because she didn't know if they'd believe it. She only knew one thing. If she didn't tell her story now, someone else would, and the world was already listening to everyone but her. But here's the brutal reality she's facing. The public doesn't want her version anymore. They want the version they've decided is more interesting. The Hollywood girl with shadows behind her smile and whispers behind her history. Colin Jost didn't destroy Meghan Markle. He just reminded the world to ask questions she thought she'd never have to answer. And now those questions won't stop. Because once a rumor becomes a joke, it's immortal. And Meghan's carefully built empire is crumbling, one punchline at a time.